Okay, so right now I want to talk about the Second Amendment. Now, I want to clarify that I believe in the right to bear arms. I legally purchased such things. But there's a lot of talk about the Second Amendment giving us, like we the people, the right to bear arms to protect ourselves against the tyrannical government, meaning our own government. And I do think the state has too much power now. I do think that we have a rational fear of the government and state consolidating too much power over us. Even discussion of torture and legal ambiguities, assassinating citizens overseas without trial, and so on. Having said that, I believe it's a fantasy that the Constitution gives we the people the right to bear arms in order to protect us from our own state. And I'm going to explain why, which is never discussed. Let's look at the U.S. Constitution in Section 8. In Section 8 here, it talks about Congress shall have a right to lay and collect taxes, duties, imports, excises, blah, blah, blah. And it goes down to all these rights that the Congress shall have. And then it says, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such a part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. Okay, so here we're seeing that the Constitution gives the state the right to suppress uprisings. And I don't know if, and then it's in the context of militias, which then in the Second Amendment of the Constitution, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed. That's a little more ambiguous, especially in context of the fact that the Constitution earlier explicitly gives the state the right to suppress insurrections. And then also, I just want you to look up Shay's Rebellion. The Constitution is formed out of the failure of the Articles of Confederation that was before that, because there was a rebellion of Revolutionary War veterans that were rightfully and justly pissed off that they were being treated terribly and put in debtors' prisons. And this insurrection, Shay's Rebellion, took off way more than they would have hoped or conceived, the establishment. George Washington was horrified by this, by the way. You should all look up and go into details of Shay's Rebellion. And the states had no way of coordinating the ability to work together to have a centralized state apparatus to suppress this uprising without the help of like mercenary type characters and so forth. So the Constitution then gets formed somewhat out of the context that it was the Articles of Confederation before were ineffectual to suppress an uprising that in very many ways would sound like what most gun advocates would be saying that we the people are given a right to do, which is, you know, I mean, a military vet who's being screwed over doesn't have a right to take up arms and rebel against this. Well, that's how all the founding fathers for the most part felt. Jefferson was a little less so. You should look up Shay's Rebellion. Look up the Whisky Rebellion and George Washington's response to that. Okay, the Whisky Rebellion. And so I just want to see what you guys think on this. If there's a way that you think you can get around this, I mean, it's interesting, but it seems very clear that the language there, the Constitution can't give you the right for the state to suppress uprisings, insurrections, and then say that we have a right to overthrow the state and have an insurrection if they're oppressive. Now, in the Federalist Papers, if you get this, look at number 47. I won't have time, or 46 should I say, Federalist number 46. There's more detail about militias in the context to the right to bear arms, and this, I think, does make it sound like a little bit more of what people would think of the Second Amendment would mean, but because it's in the context of militias that would be regulated by a state, I think that's where the difference is still there. And because we don't have militias now, many people think that the National Guard replaced that. Now, if the National Guard replaced the role of the militia, Maybe the National Guard itself, that is unconstitutional. I don't know. That's a whole other can of worms, right? So anyways, please feel free to give me your thoughts, some documentation. It's interesting, and I will see what y'all come up with.